To my knowledge, there's only one person in NFL draft media that does 1,000+ scouting reports on 1,000+ players every single draft season. And we got him on the show today. So this is a very large episode. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the great Emory Hunt. What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Bootleg Football Podcast. Once again, we have Emory Hunt joining us today on the show. One of, if not the most dedicated draft/football analysts in the entire world. Doesn't just cover the NFL, covers basically every single league you could think of. Watches more college football players than I think anybody else in terms of preparing for the draft. So he is a wealth of knowledge. We have a gigantic interview coming up with him on this show. But before we get to that, EJ, buddy, how you doing?
I'm pumped. I am giddy excited to have Emory on the show. We met him a couple of years ago. We've followed his work for years before that, so it was a thrill to get to meet him and to be able to have him on the show and share some of his knowledge, because if we were trying to share all of it, we'd be here for literally years. And Emory is the best. On an earlier episode of the Bootleg Football Podcast, we branded someone else the hardest working person in draft media, and people called us out in the comments and said, don't erase Emory Hunt. And we're not. We think anybody is actually probably trying to take Emory's title if they want to be the hardest working person in draft media, because he is everywhere. We said it at the top. 1,000+ scouting reports in his annual draft report. That's right, 1,000 players a year, which is ridiculous. Not to mention doing live games, working at CBS, hosting gigs, covering the XFL, the CFL, the USFL. If there is football, Emory will be there, and just legitimately jacked. He took a bunch of time to come hang out on Bootleg Football.
Well, we're not going to waste any more of your time because this is a very, very, very meaty interview. So we're just going to jump right into it and get to Emory Hunt. The great Emory Hunt joining us now on bright and early Wednesday morning. Emory, I got to say, we were kind of struggling figuring out which order to put all your credits in, because you can be found literally anywhere. CBS Sports, football game plans, or the playbook, Pro Football Writers of America. You're literally everywhere, doing everything, putting out possibly the biggest draft guide in all of draft media, 1,000+ scouting reports every single year. Are you sleeping at all?
Now I am. Now that we're done with this draft guide, definitely enjoying my we're on 4 days removed from the draft guide being released. So yeah, these 4 nights of sleep. I'm still popping up early without an alarm clock because I'm so used to what it took to get this draft guide out. So yes, definitely enjoying much more sleep now.
How many reports would you crank out a day when you're working on that thing?
Oh, it's a 12-hour day, so I can probably get through 20 to 22 scouting reports in a 12-hour day. Well, obviously you take a 2-hour break in the middle of the day, but I start at 5:30 in the morning and I'm done about 6:30 p.m. So take a break between 12 and 2 to go eat, exercise, chill, do whatever, just kind of get away from the laptop or get away from the film, and then you jump back at it and bang out some more. But certain positions take longer, certain positions take be faster, but you're looking at between 20 to 25 at the most. The most I ever done in a day was 30.
Wow. So you're just doing that every day for 5 months straight. That's all right.
Not even for 5 months straight. Like, just for, people forget. I'm glad you asked, because it's like my process doesn't start until January. So when you see, because I'm covering the NFL and college football during the season, so I'm not really jumping into draft stuff until I'm at the All-Star game. So while I'm there, I'm doing practice content, but I'm also back in the room early in the morning before we get to practice, grading film. And then after the All-Star circuits, it's every day like that, 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. From February 1st through this year, April 1st.
Yeah, as an amount of discipline, I'm glad you brought it up, because a lot of people think they want to do this, and then they get looking at that and they don't. And for just for counterpoint, I maybe do 5 guys a day. And my process starts about the same time because we cover the NFL. We go to the All-Star games. I'll cover 5 or 6 guys a day when I'm not prepping for an All-Star game. When I'm prepping for an All-Star game, it's 15, per day to get ready because you got to get through 100 guys before you go. And, throughout the process, all the other things we're doing, I probably do 5, 6 a day. I'd probably do them a little bit slower than you do. But it's every day. It's early to late. It's Monday through Sunday for me. Everybody in my life knows that until the draft's over, oh yeah, probably not going to that thing on the weekend because you got guys to get through, and every day you don't get through them, you gotta push them to another day. But the sheer amount in your draft guide, yeah, I don't know anybody that does more, over 1,000. And I let everybody know, and I will continue to let everybody know when there's a guy that I didn't see or probably haven't heard of, you're the guy I reach out to. And I'm like, Emory, do you ever report on blank and blank? And it'll happen mid-season. Somebody will get picked up off the street, go practice squad, and all of a sudden he's starting for the Browns. And I'm like, who? Oh, yeah, I remember that guy was in the draft. I didn't watch him. Emory, give me your page, man. And you do. I don't think you've missed in the 3 or 4 years I've been doing that. I don't think there's a guy that I've asked for that you've been like, nope, don't have a report on him. You're always like, here it is, and it's lickety split. I can't thank you enough for that. And everybody should check out Emory's draft guide because of that, because of the depth and because of the sort of end-to-end coverage. And the other thing that's really important to me about it is you tweeted about it the other day. Independent. It's one guy's opinion. It's your guy's opinion. And so many people talk about the top 100 over and over again. We get kind of numb to that. This is your take on all those guys, and I think that's awesome. It's one of the reasons I love it.
Well, you kind of have to, man, because if you're going to do this, why wouldn't you want your opinion? Why do this to be like everybody else? And it's not being a contrarian just for the sake of being a contrarian. Mm-hmm. I mean, heck, there's some years where, let's say, for instance, quarterback of 2018, my number one quarterback was Lamar Jackson, right? When everybody else had other quarterbacks higher. My running back one last year, the guy I liked a lot, Jay-Sean Corbin. He's now on the practice squad of the Giants. But you look at, wow, why would you have him number one? Well, that's what I saw. That's what I liked. I put it in the guide. Not saying that because he's number one, I didn't like, Brees Hall or the kid from Texas A&M that's with the Chargers. I liked all of those guys. It's just that, I just thought this guy's film was graded a little bit better, And so I think a lot of people are afraid to, if you want to call it a whiff or a miss, you don't know until the guy actually plays. And that's whether that's in the NFL or in another league. Like my number 4 quarterback, I want to think in 2017 or 18, whatever year PJ Walker came out. It was, I think, year. He was my number 4 quarterback after Watson, that Watson, Mahomes, Kaiser. Then you had PJ Walker, and we didn't know how good PJ Walker was until he actually got on the field in the XFL and tore it up. Then it's like, damn, his scouting report made sense. So I'm always willing to be out there, whether I'm right, wrong. I said this a lot. I said again, I'd rather be wrong by myself than wrong in a group. At least, I'm thinking, for myself. So that's the whole purpose behind putting it out there. If you're going to be right, cool. If you're going to be wrong, cool. Like, at least we know it's your opinion.
As somebody who mocked Stone Forsythe in the first round a couple of years ago, believe me, I get it. With each passing round, everybody's like, "Oh, you were wrong on him," and it's like, well, yes and no. Right. Just because once they're in the league, even if they're a 6th round pick, they could still perform like a 1st round pick. You never know. You got to wait like 3 or 5 years, and then you can clown on me. But because you watch so many guys, and because you have decidedly your own opinion on 1,000 players, we thought you were the perfect guy to bring on for this particular segment, where you could call it Shadow Sleepers, which is a name that EJ coined that I really loved it because they're sleeper players that are in the shadow of a teammate that's getting more hype. And we gave you a whole bunch of different options of like all these different duos at every single position that's coming out. And you chose 5 guys that are shadow sleepers to their own teammates. The first one we got is Josh Downs and Antoine Green, the wide receiver duo from North Carolina. What is it about Antoine Green that you feel like is not allowing him to, or at least not letting him to get the hype that you think he deserves?
Firstly, I'm laughing because I love the concept. And I remember this was 20, whatever year it was. I was at the Boston College Kansas game. and everyone was there watching the kid from Boston College, the running back, right? That's not with the Packers. AJ Dillon.
Yeah.
So I put my scouting notes after the game, posted on Football Game Plan. I was like, quiet as kept. This guy may be the biggest sleeper coming from a Power 5 program because there's no such thing as a Power 5 sleeper. But Khalil Herbert is phenomenal. And, he was behind Puka Williams, who was also phenomenal. And so he leaves and transfers and goes to Virginia Tech. Then he goes off. But I love this concept of, silent sleepers, because that's a good example. And Green is someone, to me, that has good all-around game. From a route running standpoint, from how he uses his hands within the route, to how he catches the football, how he approaches the football in terms of catching the ball. Some guys don't know how to catch. You can really see if a guy is a good or bad hands catcher with how they approach the football. You don't see that with Green. And while everyone was talking about downs, Green's on the other side doing his thing consistently. He may not have the top end speed to consistently separate, but he's open. And when we talk about open from a football perspective, throw it his way, he's going to catch it. To me, that's open. So Green is someone that exemplifies that, and he's going to end up being a better pro than he probably was in college based off his skill set.
I love Antoine Green. He caught my eye at the Shrine Bowl, and I thought, man, he's good size. He's, again, it's not super flashy necessarily, but really solid. One of those guys on the practice field that you put a tick next to and go, okay, I'm going to go back to him when I go home. And I did 6'1", 200, good long speed, not great. 4.4 is what he ran, track speed. I think you see most of that high 4.4 on the field. He strides and drives on his routes. He can eat cushion. He just crushed Notre Dame with go-route speed. Notre Dame's got some athletes. This is the one that kills me. 19-yard average per reception for his career. Not one season. That's ridiculous. And he's caught 74 balls over the last 2 years. It's not like he's some guy that catches one route a game and that's the game. So Downs, obviously incredibly hyper-productive, was one of my offensive gems on this podcast this year. Love his game, but the more you dig when you go and you look at Antoine Green, the more there is to like. Catches it with his hands, understands routes, has enough speed to get open, gets open, is open consistently. He's tough after the catch. Not necessarily a great yak threat in terms of jitterbug, lots of moves, agility, whatever, but he runs really strong, and he's one of those guys that you look at, and I'm with you. I think better pro than collegiate when I see the film.
In terms of other North Carolina receivers that have come out in past years, where would you stack him up against? Not just Downs, but like Mac Hollins, like all these, because it feels like Tar Heels have at least one every single year. Where would you put him among all those?
What was the other one that ended up going to Washington as well?
De'Ami Brown.
De'Ami Brown. Yeah. So I would say he would, because I had a good grade on De'Ami Brown, and De'Ami Brown was an example of, when we talk about certain drops, right? Why he dropped the ball. He caught the football well over his shoulder, but when the ball comes at him, that's when he drops the ball. To me, that's more lines of someone seeing the ball late. Because a lot of times you look at a guy that's catching the middle or the back part of the ball, you're seeing it late, which means you're getting your hands up late, which means you're more likely to drop those comebacks and curls and stuff like that. But anything over your head, you have enough time to really, track it and get your hands in the right position. So I didn't see him as a bad hands catcher, but I see Green as someone that got great hands because of all of those things. He's getting up quick. He's able to snatch it and pluck it out the air. I'd say I put him above Brown, and I think I like him, even though he's my number 4 split in, because I break down a receiver position in 4 different spots. And Downs is my number 2 slot guy. So I do like Downs. It's just that I just think that Green has some really good skill set.
It's really, really, really high praise. Now, looking at another receiver duo for Penn State, we also are big fans of Parker Washington over here, but Michell Tinsley feels like has gotten zero attention, despite being another one of these guys where it's like he slathers super glue on his gloves every single game. Where do you see him relative to Parker Washington? And similar question, all the other Penn State receivers that have come out in recent years, like Dotson and all them.
Dotson, I have higher. I was there live at the Maryland game, where it just looked like Maryland was a D3 program in terms of comparing, Dotson's speed and explosiveness to dudes not trying to catch him. It's like, man, this is a Power 5 program. He just completely accelerating past, dudes that have legit elite athleticism. So Dotson ranks high for me. But Tinsley's up there. I like Tinsley better than Parker Washington. Tinsley has great body control. And when you combine that with great hands, you're likely to catch everything thrown your way. You're going to get your body in position to make these plays. He doesn't mind sacrificing, even though Washington does a great job of sacrificing for the ball. Give me those guys 10 times out of 10. Where you're diving for passes. Washington has a great one on film as well. When you're able to do those things, you're able to help your quarterback out. You expand your catch radius. Tinsley, to me, is not getting talked about enough. So I like him inside as a slot receiver too. He could be that bigger slot guy, 205, 207. He had a really good week at the NFLPA Bowl, just constantly winning his one-on-one matchups in tight coverage. And, you want to see him be a little bit more physical with his hands at the apex of the route, when facing that tight coverage. But you like the fact that he does, show that body control, has some good quicks and some good bursts, and was able to step up in that competition and went from, Western Kentucky to Penn State and perform well.
Yeah, there's a couple things about that analysis that I like or am interested by, and we'll talk about the school transfer trail that a lot of these guys are leaving now later. But I want to go back to Tinsley's game in terms of how I see it on tape, and I love the fact that you separated the over-the-shoulder catch with the facing the quarterback catch and talked about the difference there, because a lot of people just kind of want to say, can he catch? And I'm like, well, that's a big category. Can he catch along the sidelines? Can he catch it over his shoulder? Can he catch it, again, when he turns and has to locate the ball late? And I want to take that same sort of look at a wide receiver and say they're not good for all roles. A lot of times people just want to say, are they a good wide receiver? And again, for what? We talk about building wide receiver rooms. You want your outside guys. You want your slot guys. And Tinsley's a guy to me that's a good short area wide receiver, and you need those guys. He struggles with speed separation, but he gets it through breaks and cuts. He catches the ball through contact really well because he has to. A lot of times the guy's right there, but he makes the catch. He's really used to that. He comes back to the ball well, helps out his quarterback. Those are guys I really appreciate. Late in the down, you're going to see him turn around and bail Sean Clifford out because he's not just trying to beat his guy 20 yards downfield. He's going to go, oh, wait a second, that guy's got pressure. Turn around, give me the little comeback route. Don't see him as a sort of really elusive guy, but he's super tough, catches in traffic, goes over the middle. I love that you said put him in the slot because I can see him filling a role for a team there and being really productive. Is he a guy I would go after up high? No. But is he a guy that can carve out a role doing just those things? Yeah, those are all really valuable skills in the league.
He strikes me as somebody who doesn't get open as much as he gets leverage. And those are, I think, two different things where it's like, okay, if he crosses face, he's not going to pull away from somebody because, he's like 4'6" guy. But once he crosses your face and he gets leverage, as long as the quarterback is throwing the ball, away from the DB and just kind of putting him between the ball and the DB, he's going to catch it, which to me is still good enough. So I would, if I was a team that had a really, really accurate quarterback, within like the 10 to 15 yard area. Honestly, I think he'd be a great fit in Carolina, assuming they take either Young or Stroud, because both of them are very pinpoint accurate in those areas. I don't necessarily think he's going to be somebody who roasts people with route running, but he's so good at, getting to the right spot at the right time with leverage, setting guys up, and just getting that one little step. And once he has that one little step and the ball's in his hands, it's not coming out. He's so good at catching through contact, which is an underrated skill. Like some guys, like you hit their elbow and like their thumb comes loose from the ball and that's it. Like it's the grip strength, I think, is what's really, really a great trait of his. And even though, maybe he won't be the most productive guy, I think other guys of that profile, like the Jacoby Myerses of the world, like they're gonna play for a while. They're gonna have a job for a while. So I love that you highlighted him, just because I think Washington gets all the attention over there from the Penn State receiving group, but Tinsley might not go that much later, if at all, than Washington. One last receiver duo here, and this is one that EJ specifically wanted to talk about, just because this is the one that I think gets the most attention of either or, right? Where do you fall when it comes to Jalen Hyatt versus Cedric Tillman at Tennessee?
This is I'm glad y'all added this one, because this is Antoine Green / Josh Downs. This is the same thing, because we know Wyatt is, you pluck and play him right in the slot right away, right? He could even be a flanker or a Z receiver, you know what I'm saying? You could put him on the move, get him going against, coverage or flow, and let him just use his speed, kind of like how they use him at Tennessee. But when you look at Tillman to me is more like Michael Thomas, where he's 6'2", 215, he's physical, and you could see a defined role for him as an X or a split end, right? You see him as, okay, he's going to be our number one, our go-to guy, because he could beat bump press. He could win at the top of the route. He could win above the rim. He has no problem meeting the DB at the top of the globe and snatch the ball off the top of somebody's head. You just want to see it more consistently. Now, the unique part about Tillman is kind of like with Michael Thomas. Like they don't have the speed to say straight separate, but they do have enough quickness where they always are consistently able to stack the DB. So that's even better than sometimes just flying past. We all can't beat Flipper Anderson, right? So you look at someone just being able to stack the DB, the quarterback puts it in a good spot, combined with his physicality, he's going to go up and go get the football. So I like him as a pro. To me, he was playing pro ball at Tennessee. And staying healthy is going to be key, is for him. But I'm a bigger fan more so of Tillman as opposed to Wyatt. Although I like Wyatt or Hyatt, I like him, as well. But Tillman, to me, you've seen more of the Tillmans more so have their success than you've seen of his teammate. So, and to me, the Hyatt, so that's the thing. Not saying Hyatt is not going to be a good player, because speed is something you can't coach. And you'll find a way to get speed the ball, right? You could hand it to him on the end around, you throw him a quick pop pass, you send him on those deep over routes. Speed gonna find his way to the football, but someone like Tillman could be that down and down out type of receiver that you like, that you've seen consistently over time at the NFL level.
Yeah, that's what I love about Tillman's game, and the thing that usually people are getting to Tillman second. Hyatt's got more press, he's got more flash. People are even talking about him sneaking into the first round again because of that speed. And look, speed is just it's like a moth and a flame in the NFL. Everybody, if there's speed, people are going to go after it, especially at the wide receiver position. And I do think in Jalen Hyatt's defense, there's more to his game than just speed, but it is a narrower profile than his teammate right on the other side. Cedric Tillman, when he's there and he's healthy, he's bigger. I think he's tougher in the way that he plays football. He wins at the break because of that short area acceleration quickness. He carries speed through shallow breaks really, really well. You'll see it on the slant, hard plant and drive, crosses the face, and then he's open. Again, really good hands catcher. I'm a sucker for a good hands catcher. And you see him reliably, again, pluck the ball, get his hands out away from his body, can catch through contact. He's just a much more well-rounded profile in terms of a skill set that you can see playing more roles or sort of wider slice of the pie in the NFL than his teammate. And I think he's going to go higher as long as people are okay with the medicals. And that's a big question with him because he did miss a lot of time due to injury. They'll know whether or not that was a freak thing or whether that was a repetitive thing. And if teams are comfortable with his health status, they're going to be very comfortable picking that guy as a solid number 2. When I look at play style, he reminds me of a T. Higgins. He's not as big as T, but he plays that outside role really well. Maybe not quite as much speed, just pure down the boundary, but he will, again, go up at high point the ball. A lot of similar route usage. And again, now that T's been in the league a couple of years and he's continued to evolve his game, people are saying, hey, he could be that sort of quiet number 1. He could be a number 1 if he goes to a team. I think we might be having a very similar conversation about Cedric Tillman in a couple of years, if he stays healthy.
Today's episode is brought to you by ButcherBox. You could take the guesswork out of buying high-quality meat and have it delivered right to your door from ButcherBox as often as you want it. All of their beef is 100% grass-fed. They have free-range chicken, wild-caught seafood, and pork-raised crate-free. You've seen a lot of the great food that I've cooked using different meats from ButcherBox on this channel, and if you're watching the YouTube version of the show, that's on screen right now. But the one thing that you probably don't see is chicken. And that changes right now, because for the next year, you can get 3 full pounds of bone-in chicken thighs for free in every single box from ButcherBox, plus $20 off your first box, just by using promo code BOOTLEG at butcherbox.com/bootleg. When you go to the site, you can get a variety of box plan options, from curated to customized, so you can get the exact cuts that you want. Obviously, I've always leaned towards the all-beef boxes myself, but I'm not going to lie, I could make a pretty mean pan-seared chicken breast and really good tequila lime shrimp as well. Shout out to Sam, the cooking guy, for that recipe. So I'll probably be branching out to those on my next box. But either way, if you're a meat lover like me and EJ are, and if you don't want to deal with going out to the butcher shop to get great cuts to work with, and you just want it delivered easily and quickly, check out what ButcherBox has to offer. Once again, you can get free chicken thighs for a year in every box, plus $20 off your first box when you sign up today with code BOOTLEG at butcherbox.com/bootleg. Thank you again to ButcherBox for sponsoring today's show. And with that, let's get back to it. One that this was the one that I think maybe got us most excited about, because when we saw this on the list, we're like, okay, we need to hear, out of all the duos that were on the page, we need to hear why this one was highlighted. Ali Gaye in the shadow of B.J. Ojulari. Sell me on Ali Gaye. I would love to hear this.
Well, same with wide receiver. I break down the defensive line in different roles. You know, I look at Ali Gaye more as your hand in the dirt 4-3 defensive end. I look at Ojulari as an edge rusher, right? Someone that you want to just rush the passer. You go back in 2020, I believe, or 2021, when he first got there from JUCO, Ali Gaye was dominant, you know, and we're talking about as a 5-tech. He'll put those heavy hands on you. He put those paws on you. He's like George Foreman in terms of how he's able just to strike you. Large hands, very Sean Jones-like when Sean Jones was playing with the Raiders and the Oilers. Someone that just has those heavy hands to control. And if you're controlling the line of scrimmage or the point of attack, you're winning, because you're not allowing this lineman to get his blocks off. You're not allowing him to get to the second level. You're freeing up an opportunity for your backers to make a play. But also, his power is one of his biggest assets as a pass rusher. So for me, having him, let's say you could have him as a strong side defensive end where he's setting a physical edge. You know, he's actually smart enough to play the run. He's able to extend, so he's able to read out and then get off the block and then make the tackle. So to me, he's, again, just like with Cedric Tillman, we've seen Ali Gaye have success a lot. You know, we've seen this combination before. And I think with the way he gets off the football, with the way he's able to use his hands to disengage, now he's not going to wow you as a you know, overly movie pass rusher, but he's productive, and you need those guys up front. Ojulari, to me, seems like, in a way, he's a little bit more one-dimensional in his rush approach. He wins with effort, and you need effort guys out there. I'm big on effort. He's got good length, but I need to see him be a little bit more consistent down in, down out. And I think Gabe, because he dealt with some injuries the last year or so, it kind of had people forget how dominant he was when he first got to LSU.
That's a cool explanation. I'm going to have to go back further in Gaye's tape, because I looked at this year's tape, and that's average stuff. And average is still pretty good in the SEC, but he wasn't one of the guys that popped out to me, which is why I was fascinated and excited about this. When we got this list, one of the first things I talked to Brett about was, man, I want to hear what he has to say about Ali Gaye, because I don't see it with Ali Gaye. And I love talking to other analysts when they see it with a player and I don't, because I always learn something no matter what. Sometimes they sell me on them, sometimes they don't, and sometimes they say something that guides me to the right place to have a better impression of that player. And if it's, hey, when he got there and he had heavy hands, I didn't go back to his tape. Again, when you're going as deep as you are, it's fascinating to me that you get into all the years of their tape. A lot of times I'm looking at what they've done lately, right? Unless there's something outstanding like an injury or they missed a lot of time in a season, then I'll go back to previous season. Or possibly if the offensive coordinator's changed and we're talking about a wide receiver and his production dropped off a cliff, I'll go back to the year that he had a really good year and say, okay, why was everybody excited about him? So I'll have to go back on Gaye and dig in because I'm really interested. He played solidly. Usually solidly doesn't get you drafted, but I want to go back and look at that sort of impact tape in an earlier year and say, I want to see what Emory sees or see if I can see what Emory sees.
It reminds me of Miles Murphy, because when I first watched Miles Murphy this year, I was like, I don't know. And then one of my buddies was like, okay, well, go back to the last 2 years under Venables and what. And then I was like, okay, I get it now, because people were saying like, some teams out there have equivalent grades among Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson, and Miles Murphy. And I was like, no way. But you watch 2020 and 2021, and now I'm like, all right, I kind of get it. So like I'm gonna have to go back and watch 2021 for Gaye as well, because 2022 I was kind of I don't know. But if when he was fresh at LSU in 2021, kicking ass like that, I'm all about it. I'd love to go watch that.
Same thing with Brian Bresee. Like, people forget how dominant of a player he was, and he was dealing with injuries, and he had a lot going on, and I know what that's like. Your head is probably not where, on football, because you got life going on. And so that dude is dominant, and so for me, if somebody want to take Brian Bresee in the top 10, I have no questions, because I know when he's right, and he's legit. And I'm not saying Gaye is a top 10, but there's something about, watching him play that role and play it well. And then knowing that he had the injuries and, so things, are going to be different. And for Ojulari, I just feel like, he got to have a better pass rushing plan and repertoire at his disposal as he moves forward. So him growing his game from a technique standpoint and adding to it is going to be key, because that's the harder part a lot of guys struggle with going to the pros, because, you got to really do a lot of work on your own.
Looking at corner now, Cam Smith gets a lot of attention from South Carolina, which has become a little bit of a DB factory in recent years, South Carolina. But beyond Cam Smith, somebody who's maybe not getting as much attention as Darius Rush, who's also extraordinarily talented. And, at least personally for me, looking at either young receivers or young corners, if they recently switch sides of the ball, I tend to be really, really interested in that, because I like guys that understand what their opponent is trying to do and what they're like. DeAndre Hopkins was a corner before he converted to receiver. Tariq Woolen was a receiver before he converted to corner. Sherman was a receiver before he converted to corner. Really talented guys that have switched positions and converted, I tend to be really interested in. So tell us about Darius Rush and where you see him relative to Cam Smith.
Well, I like him better than Cam Smith. And the reason why is because, you have that, you heard a lot about Smith going into throughout the year. And so with Rush, a lot of people didn't talk about him, but a lot of people didn't bring up what you brought up. He was a receiver. And so that adjustment is going to take time. But having that background and now building on that with technical skill and his athleticism, you saw what we saw at the Senior Bowl, right? Like, man, this dude's he's running routes for these dudes out there on the field. I've never seen someone from the time I played ball to the time I've been watching ball. No one ever catches interceptions like this in one-on-ones, because it's not favoring the defensive player. You don't see that. And we saw it with Rush. We saw it with Deion Henley. When guys are just catching interceptions, like it blew my mind. So for Rush, you looking at where he is now, knowing his background, where he's going to be, he's only going to get better. And now he has stacked, positive performances going into and the good part about my process, I watch these guys live before I go back and watch their film. So by the time because again, you could easily get fooled by what you see at a Senior Bowl practice or any All-Star game practice. So it's always great to watch what you saw and then go back, and when you watch the film, you're like, oh, so this does check out what I saw live. And now you're able to cross reference and kind of, okay, this dude definitely can match up one-on-one. He definitely has the length and the athleticism for the position. He can play on the boundary. I have him as a good boundary corner. I know in the league, there's, no field side or boundary side because everything's in the middle of the field. But when I say boundary, I look at boundary like I look at the X receiver, as this is a guy that could be, you want him on their best guy. And so that's what I see from Rush. I just think he has good skill set, good ball skills, good ball awareness, and having the knowledge of offense, understands route concepts, down and distance, what guys are going to try to do to him in certain down and distance situations. And with that understanding, it's almost like a cheat code playing corner, knowing all of that on offense that And so that's why I think he has a higher upside to me than his teammate, who's also fantastic and probably is a little bit more versatile, can play safety or corner. But Rush, to me, is someone that I would feel confident. Yeah, put him on their number one guy and let him eat.
So much of this business, this process, is about projection, especially when we get to this confluence of college football and the NFL that is the NFL draft. And it's about floor and ceiling and looking at guys and saying, are they topped out or do they still have room to grow? And Darius Rush is a guy that impresses me as having room to grow for all the reasons that you mentioned. Physical profile is really impressive in terms of his size. That was the one thing about Cam Smith. I assumed Cam Smith was bigger. He plays bigger on tape, and then you look at it, you look at him weigh in, and you're like, oh, all right, is he maxed at that size? Again, Cam Smith, very good player. This is not anti-Cam Smith. The Darius Rush thing really came into focus at the Senior Bowl. He popped off. A lot of people mentioned him at that point. A lot of people headed back to the tape after that. One of the things I love about having guests like you on the show is listening to how your process works, because you said you watch the Senior Bowl tape, or you watch Senior Bowl live first and then you go back to their tape to confirm. I do it the opposite way. I watch tape going into the Shrine Bowl and then I say, okay, I saw this guy do it on tape, but he was doing it against Fordham or he was doing it against Florida. Like, can he continue to do that with new teammates in a new environment, maybe even playing a new position, definitely playing for new coaches? And again, you weight all that stuff appropriately, but do I see the same things I saw on tape? And the order is different for me, but still important. And the most important thing is that cross-reference. Does one thing check out to the other, or do I only see it in one place, or do I only see it in testing, or does it translate either to an all-star game setting or back to the tape? And that's really important. So I find that sort of fascinating as a side note. But Darius Rush, I'm with you that when we talk about floors and ceilings, I think Cam Smith might be closer to his ceiling already, and that's a credit to him, how hard he's worked in his development. Darius Rush feels like he's closer to his floor, and there's a lot of room. And if he lands in the right spot in the NFL and continues to work, continues to improve, meshes with the coaches, we talk about situation all the time. If that's a hit on draft night, the sky is going to be pretty close to the limit for him because of all the things we've mentioned. So fascinating player, and where he is in his sort of player arc is very different than his teammate, but I think going to be very attractive to NFL teams.
Yeah, he just feels like a day two Patriots corner that they play man 70% of the time and end up turning him into a monster in like 3 or 4 years, because that's just what they do. Like that's what New England does. Rounding it off here with one more DB duo. This one I was juiced for when I saw it, because I was like, finally, somebody else wants to talk about Trey Dean. I am not alone. So please give us your thoughts on Trey Dean versus Rashad Torrance.
Well, again, background is everything. And a lot of people may watch Trey Dean and just grade his film and based off what it is and say, like, oh, well, nah, he doesn't do this, and this. But then you remember, he was a corner when he got there. Mm-hmm. Cornerback eyes, cornerback footwork, cornerback instincts, and safety eyes, safety footwork, and safety instincts are two different things. So sometimes you may get guys that play safety that have moved from, cornerback, and they still got cornerback eyes. and they want to jump everything. They're not getting depth in their drops, in their zone drops. Not saying deeper than the deepest, right? Because they're entertained by what's going on in the backfield. Then you get those guys that play safety, and they move down the corner, and they're too patient. They're not aggressive. They're not twitchy. They're not jumpy. They're wanting to let things, play out before they make a decision. Now you just rack up a series of, stop routes being completed on you because you're not, urgent in how you play. So knowing that about Dean, you understand upside still here. And you like the fact that we've now moved to a positionless football, game. We're heading that way for a while now. The game, I would say, when I started to differentiate between positions was like 2015, where I started to say, hey, free safety, strong safety, combo safety, boundary corner, slot corner, field corner, because you saw the transition then. It's becoming more CFL and more college-like anyway. So for Dean, yes, the safety part, he still has room to grow, but he's still someone that can match up on game day and play one-on-one versus a tight end, versus a bigger physical wide receiver. He still has good instincts for defensive back play. And, hey, we can coach him up on getting better at safety, or we could just let him just be that combo guy and put him, in the middle between two other safeties, and let him be that third guy and thrive there. So I like Dean. I like the leadership he showed at the Shrine Game. I keep pointing this out because it was just something that I had never seen. Right before his reps were done, or as his reps were done, and other guys went back out there, and the practice was about to wrap up, he went down the line and the sideline and dapped off everybody, on the defense. Shook their hand. You never saw someone do that. And to me, that's just kind of like one of those things that scouts may write down and be like, there's something about this kid that exudes leadership. And when you combine that with how well he played at the Shrine Game, in terms of the week of practices, this is someone that I'd be willing to stand on the table and say, okay, I'll take him over Torrance because I like the versatility, I like the skill set, but I also like the intangibles about the player.
My thing with Dean, he reminds me a lot of, if you remember Andre Howell when he was coming out of Vandy. Andre started as a corner, and I first saw Hal when he was lined up against Dante Moncrief. I want to say it was like 2012, so about 10 years ago. And I was like, oh, okay, I really like that Vandy corner. And I had like a top 60 grade on Andre Howell coming out. Ended up going back at the 7th. And people, again, one of those like, oh my God, Brett's insane. Well, they converted Howell from corner to safety. And then he led the Texans in picks 2 years in a row. Unfortunately, his career was cut short by cancer. But, like, that's where that was the first time that I saw the corner to safety pipeline be a thing. And that has informed how I've graded a lot of safeties over the years. Guys that have corner experience that convert. Eddie Jackson was one that I was huge on. I had him as a top 15 pick. He ended up going to the 4th, and then he became an all-pro. Because I really, really like safeties that have corner experience. Javon Holland was another recent one where I was like, he has corner experience. I think if you put him at safety, he's going to be phenomenal. Devin Witherspoon is one this year. He's going to play corner in the league, but I'm like, he's an all-pro safety if you put him at safety. Trey Dean, I think, is another guy who's flying way under the radar that is part of that pipeline, because I think that there are safeties, in modern defenses that basically have to play corner just from a way deeper alignment, especially with all the quarters that you're seeing these days. It's like you're playing nickel, but with 15 yards of cushion instead of 4. And so I think having that corner experience where, you can plant and drive on stuff and you can match stuff deep down the field, stay in the hip pocket, like that is such a valuable skill set for a modern safety to have. My one complaint with Dean was, he's playing DB for a reason. He would drop interceptions. And I'm like, dude, you were in position, just catch the ball. Came out in Shrine Bowl, had one practice where he had 3 picks, and I'm like, okay, maybe he hit the jugs machine and fixed it. Because if he did, there's not really a whole lot else that I have a problem with, and I think he's going to be a way undervalued safety because of that.
Yeah, the thing that pops out about Dean's tape to me is when you look at how they used him at Florida, he ends up everywhere. He ends up as a true slot. He ends up as a too high safety look, middle field open. He'll be true deep occasionally, and then he'll be tight slot. He'll be a force player occasionally as well. He'll be right on the edge, what Alabama would call the star. And he seems to want to play. It is interesting knowing the corner background. He is still adapting to safety because in those sort of true safety coverage moments, he loves to play forward. He loves to break on the ball. Reminds me of like a Kyle Fuller type where he's going to get his depth and he's just going to wait. He's going to do eyes and he's going to break. And he does a lot of that. And you kind of go, oh, okay, that's how he wants to play coverage. He wants to play coverage facing the quarterback. And then there'll be that rep where he's singled up, middle field, somebody goes deep, and he literally stretches out, dives, tips the ball away, and you're like, oh, that's a corner. Like, that's corner play. That's not safety play. That's one-on-one hip pocket, 25 yards down the field, jumping up and tipping it out of the guy's reach. And you look at the full extension. He's a tremendous athlete. Seeing him up close was very evident. And then what you said about his sideline demeanor in that practice where he got 3 picks, you could see him walking up and down with all his defensive teammates. I want another one. Come on, guys. And he came over to the defensive line group who was standing right in front of me and thanked all those guys for the pressure they were putting on the quarterback that was allowing him to get picks. And nobody saw that. It was 5 feet in front of me. And I was like, that's the guy, right? That's the guy that's going to be part of a room that is going to be accepted. And it doesn't really matter his role. And you start to, again, see that more positionless shift to the league. And you go, I like him better because of that. If I was trying to pigeonhole him as, is he a corner? Is he a safety? Is he a strong safety? Is he a deep safety? I think I'd have more trouble. Right now, I'm like, he's a defensive back, and he's a good one, and he's got a lot of skills, and that's going to be attractive to some team, I would say, in the middle rounds that goes, hey, we're going to use you in a bunch of different ways because our defense has you flexing, and you're a guy that can flex, and we like those little flashes. We know you haven't got it all figured out yet, and that's okay. We'll work on that.
Now, to wrap up, and thank you again so much for all the time you've given us. We only have one more thing that we're going to let you go. And luckily for you, it's a speed round. These are just quick hitters that we couldn't let you leave without answering this. Number one, because you travel around all the time, favorite stadium that you have ever broadcasted a game from?
Oh, man. I would probably say Western Michigan. I did a Western Michigan Monmouth game. And the only reason now, there's nuance to these things, guys.
Sure.
Because there's, every booth isn't the same. Every air condition isn't set up the same. Every heating isn't the same. But the reason why I love and remember Western Michigan was the food set up for the media. They had a taco bar. I had never seen a taco station in a press box. And Western Michigan had the best taco station had ever seen and ever witnessed. Like, I ate twice. Like, I ate, pregame and I ate at halftime. I was sitting pretty for the rest of the game. So yeah, I would say Western Michigan. But from a booth perspective, food perspective, also I got to give a tie to Morgan State. HBCUs are just different in terms of food, and so Morgan State's food spread was just top tier. It felt like my mom was in there like baking. That's how fantastic it was. From a booth, Monmouth has a great booth. It has a great view of the field, great setup. It's and also for if you talk to many broadcasters, it's easy. You also look at there's rankings for easy to get in and out of. Like that's
right.
always the key. So Mama checks both of those boxes as well.
Now you're a former Louisiana Raging Cajun. There's a lot of different pros you can choose from, but got to get your answer. Only one name. Favorite Louisiana Raging Cajun of all time.
I can't give you one name because again, looking at this list that you guys put together, like my teammates on there, like Charles Tillman, Ike Taylor, 2 teammates of mine, right? But I'll tell you, I'll take it this way. I'll tell you what I saw then that made each one of these dudes great. Now, Brian Mitchell he's like number 1 Cajun. He wore number 1. His number 1 was retired before they started allowing players to wear number 1 again. I remember I got there, I was like, okay, I wore 1 in high school, and I'm like, all right, take 1. That is retired. I was like, who the hell wore number 1? It was like Brian Mitchell. I was like, oh, all right, well, cool,
okay,
fine.
I'll switch.
Like, and but Charles Tillman, one of the more brilliant dudes I've been around. Brilliance. When I say brilliance, I'm talking about how he conducted himself at practice, how he didn't make the same mistake twice, how he found other ways to be successful, because he was so good as a corner our sophomore year that he had like 10 picks or whatnot. That junior year they didn't throw at him, so he didn't have a lot of picks. Senior year they put him at safety so he can get back around the ball, and he was picking off the ball again. And so he was just so brilliant at everything. He graduated in 3 years. When people, I think he was, the reports came out he was working with he was going to join the FBI. Not surprising with how smart and brilliant this dude is. Everything he did was about brilliance. He was like the best at it. Ike's number one trait was his elite discipline. Like Ike was just so disciplined. Ike was a fantastic running back too, by the way.
Really?
Yeah,
that I didn't expect.
He was a running back. If he was Jamal Charles before Jamal Charles, right? So if Ike just wanted to be if they would have just put Ike in, left him at running back as opposed to switching him to cornerback his senior year, Ike was dope at running back. That's why his first year in the league, if you remember, he returned kickoffs. Like, but Ike was dope, and Ike's discipline. Like, I had never seen someone be so disciplined in everything that they did. Like, Ike was up at 5 a.m. with the workout, 5 a.m. workouts, but then getting extra work after practice, working out. Like, yeah, we all went out and partied, but then Ike be right back up the next morning on it. And I don't think I've ever seen Ike get tired. Like, if you even watch Ike now as a 42-year-old on his Instagram, Ike's still getting it in working out wise. Like, Ike is just like, but you have to have that level of discipline. And on top of it, he was a fantastic athlete. Like, I remember the pro day vividly. Ike the pro day happened. Ike ran a 4.3, I think a 4.39 at pro day. And it was the quietest 4.39 I've ever heard. Because he was moving and you didn't hear, like, everybody else running, you hear the ground,
he's
right?
just gliding. Yeah.
All you hear was pss, pss, pss. He was like, damn, is he running? And then I remember this vividly, to close out the pro day, they had a basketball because we were in an indoor track running, not everybody had all this there's a whole pro day production now, but this back in VHS times, right? So they had a basketball underneath the goal in the gym. So he went underneath the goal, dead standstill, bent down, picked the ball up and dunked it. It's like, damn. Like, I'd never seen nothing like that before. So Ike was a tremendous athlete, disciplined. So it's hard to pick between those two guys. And they, obviously they went on great careers. I even, because you guys have me here, Fred Stamps, excellent wide receiver. And it was unprecedented at the time to get a guy like Stamps because he was the number one receiver in the state. And we got him over LSU. And so Fred gets there, and Fred just was had great, excellent hands, like legitimate great hands. Like, whatever you put Randy Moss in, put Fred Stamps right there next to him. Fred had a cup of coffee in the NFL, but end up going to the CFL and playing with Edmonton, and they let him wear the number 2 jersey, which is huge up there for Edmonton. He's going to be a CFL Hall of Famer. And Donovan Morgan is a perfect example of late bloomer. Donovan was the number 2 receiver in the state when Fred was number 1, and we got both of them, right? And so Donovan 6'3", about 180, 185 when he got to UL. But Donovan, finally got attached to the weight room and grew and just developed into this, 6'3", 225-pound monster. He played a couple years with the Texans and Jets and then went on to be an Arena League legend. Like, he's going to be an Arena League Hall of Famer, like with the Philadelphia Soul, the Los Angeles Kings, or Los Angeles Kiss. And he was just phenomenal. So all of those guys are some of my favorite teammates and guys who just kind of watch. We're going back 24 years.
A while. Yeah,
right. You remember what they were doing then and why they got to the heights that they got to those traits that you see that I was able to see, standing next to these guys, playing with these guys, are able to, now you understand why guys are successful. You was like, man, I remember him doing this consistently, and this one element really stood out.
The fact that you remembered where all they got drafted to in the round and where they play, that's why you're best, man. Your memory is just a freaking bear trap. I never will be able to remember all that.
But they'll tell you too. If you ask those guys, they'll be like, Emory doing exactly what he said he was going to do. Like, he used to always talk, he used to always break down film and, talk about, he was like Kuiper. I was like the version of Corey Chavez at the time. Like, I'm arguing with who going drafted where because this guy is better than this guy, and this guy is like, so they'll tell you the same thing. So it's like we all had that one trait, you know what I'm saying? But it was cool. But I will say this though, for the Raging Cajuns, I guess you have to start and end with, I guess you start with Jake Delhomme and Brian Mitchell. They are like right there. Brian Mitchell
pinnacle.
Was the first 1,000-yard rusher because he played quarterback and was the first 1,000-yard rusher in school history. And the only for the up until Terrell Fenroy did it in 2004. So you talk about from 1988 to 2004, no 1,000-yard rusher in school history outside of the quarterback doing it. And Jake Delhomme for what he did, in '96 when they beat A&M down there and at Cajun Field, they upset A&M, and he's just a legend at UL.
Again, you go back to, he did the thing in college. He did his one thing. Delhomme did that one thing in college. He kept doing it in the pros. He did that very same thing when he went on to the NFL. And the other thing that I just love about that entire sequence is knowledge of the other leagues, right? I'm wearing an XFL hat today. You're talking about the CFL. You're talking about Arena League. And you're one of the few analysts I know of that has your eyes solidly outside the NFL as well as inside the NFL. And when you add all the draft stuff to that, it's an incredible palette of knowledge and your retention and everything else. One of the reasons when we got to meet you at Shrine Bowl a couple of years ago, it was kind of funny because we were both like, man, we've been watching your work forever. We're huge fans. And you're like, I like what you're doing. And we were both like, Emory Hunt knows our name?
You guys, listen, I was not, now that we're recording, I can say this. I can say I was the first to do this YouTube thing back in 2009 when nobody was doing it. But, some people get beholden to being the first, but all you're doing is creating something to where you want to see it continue to grow and elevate. You guys have legitimately taken the baton and ran with it. That's you guys. You guys I could sit back and say they're doing a fantastic job. This is what I wanted to. Watching you guys is what I wanted to do when I started. What I wanted it to look like when we started. Now you guys have obviously came in, in a short period of time and just elevated the whole landscape. And that's the beauty of the brand and the beauty of what you guys are doing and why what you guys have done is so important, because again, it's all about just taking it and elevating. And you guys are doing that.
EJ, I think I can just drop the mic and walk away.
Nah, I'm the living embodiment of the Denzel GIF right now. I'm just like, okay, I'm done. You can't tell me nothing today. Nothing.
People have a hard time giving people props, man. There's never ego in my body, man. If you guys are doing it. And listen, again, it's competition, but at the end of the day, no one wants to be the only one on the block. You want someone to keep you sharper and keep you, on your toes. But you guys have done a fantastic job just elevating this whole format and platform. It's good to see guys doing great things with the platform. Otherwise, no one would take the platform seriously.
Yeah, no, we're not competing against each other. We're competing against TV. That's how I always look at it. We're just trying to get people to watch the internet, not TV.
But you guys are doing a great job, man. Again, all seriousness, keep up the great work. Because again, back when it was in 2009, people, you doing YouTube. It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
Now look at it.
Alternative media.
Now look at it. YouTube is TV. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
I can't tell you how many times, like even within like my own family, I got, so when's Brett going to get a real job? Like, all right, cool,
Yeah.
cool. I see how it is.
I see how it is. But no, Emory, you're our people. That's all I can say about that. From your approach to how you watch players, to how you see the confluence of college football and the NFL, the way you break down rankings is very similar to the way I do it, and not the reason that I do it. I did it because I thought it made sense. You did it because you thought it made sense, and it just happens to line up in every way in terms of the media and the platform and the approach, and that collegiality, that willingness to share. You are our people, and we couldn't be happier to have you on Bootleg Football.
I'm glad you guys had me on, man. I appreciate it. This is this been fun, like going back through memory lane. And finally, just to, this is why when people always ask why you care about these other leagues or why you tend to focus on these other leagues, small schools, bro, I play with guys that should have got drafted. I play with guys that should have been in the league, and they've gone on to thrive in other leagues, which kind of forces you to watch other leagues, and so it's like, oh wow, that's a dude from Sam Houston State that we played against. Damn, he was nice, and he tearing it up at Saskatchewan. Like, so it's when you around it and you see it, this is bigger than the 260 picks in the NFL. It's bigger than the 32 teams. There's a lot of football talent. That's why I'm hoping both the XFL and USFL continue to thrive. And if we're being honest, they could add more teams. There should be a 32 team spring league because there's enough football talent out there for it to happen.
Well, so there's 260 to 270 picks in the draft. Usually about that many UDFAs go to camps as well. You still have another 500 reports on top of that for guys that are going to have to filter to other leagues, along their journey, whether it's CFL, XFL, whatever. So for all 1,000 players that you've graded this year, where can people find your draft guide?
footballgameplan.com/2023 draft guide. And the reason why I love the draft guide, not because I created it, but it's because, we know how transient the rosters are. We know guys will pop in and out of rosters all throughout training camp and preseason. And it's a good reference guide, not just for the upcoming draft, but for the entire football season. So you can find a guy that pops up on a roster and you're like, oh, well, who's that? Well, here's a report on it. And, this is serious. I want people to understand this. It's not about writing up the first 100, 150 guys and just listing 151 to 1,000, by number. No, everybody in this book has a scouting report. So, yeah, it's 165 or 1,065 scouting reports. It's 1,065 pages. So there you go.
You just write a dictionary every year in 4 months. That's all.
Pretty much. But it also helps. But for our purposes, it kind of helps you. Like now, I saw people talking about the last 4 quarterback classes. I was like, oh, let me do that this morning. I look at where I graded guys, and it's like, oh wow, that's cool how they slot. Over how my grades look over the last 4 years at this position. So it's kind of cool to kind of keep a running, and most importantly, I was putting all this on YouTube for free. What was I thinking? So now,
monetize yourself, man. Monetize.
Exactly. Now in 2020, you got it. You know what I'm saying? People always say, well, when you putting your rankings out on YouTube? Never. Get them at footballgameplan.com/2023 draft guide.
We get it. We get the same thing. When your rankings coming out? Join the Patreon. You'll get them as soon as they're out, right? You'll get them first.
I'm not a businessman. I'm a businessman.
Exactly. Right?
That's the motto.
Thank God for the pandemic because it forced me to sit down and put together a draft guide. It's like, all right, I'll do this from here on out.
Love it. Well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah. Appreciate you guys, man.
Thank you once again to Emory for joining us. That hopefully shined a little bit of a light, not just on UL history and all the great Raging Cajuns, but also some lesser-known draft prospects that maybe aren't getting talked about as much because they happen to be on a team with somebody who's going to be drafted real high. That's what we try to do on this show is talk about as many undervalued guys as we possibly can, in addition to talking to the top guys. Once again, if you have any questions on not just those lesser names, but some of the top guys and where they fit, we are doing a live stream once again Not this weekend. The last time we did a stream, we did it the day after the show comes out. But I think this is coming out Friday, and I am out of town for a wedding on Saturday and Sunday. So we're going to have to put off the live stream till Monday the 10th. And the exact time, we'll have on the banner down below here. You can go to the description below. But Monday the 10th, we're going to do a live stream. So if you have any questions on anybody that you heard about today, or really anybody else in this draft class, stop on by the live stream, do a 2-hour Q&A session once again. EJ, before we get out of here, any last words?
No, I love Emory. I'm really glad that he stopped by. I'm still awed that he loves our work and thinks of it as a continuation or a build upon his own. To me, that's one of the highest compliments we've ever received, and it's really, really cool.
Yeah, he's one of the best for a reason. So we'll see you in a few days for that live stream, and then we got another jam-packed episode coming next week. Thank you once again to our executive producers, Marat, Consti, Caden, Andrew, Taylor, Liam, Connor, Joey, and Mike. You guys make the show possible. Those are all the executive producer tier over on the Patreon. If you want to join the executive producer tier yourself, or just support on Patreon in general, that link is also at the description below. We would not be able to do this without all of you. So with that said, hope you guys enjoy your weekend. See you on Monday for a stream. See you next week for a new show. And until then, later.
Take care.